Let's get to Tim Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time.
Tim Walz has spent years carefully crafting the image of Minnesota Nice, the smiling, handshaking governor with a folksy, laid-back charm that feels safe and familiar. He plays the role of the approachable neighbor, the calm voice in the room, the leader who seems harmless by design. But the moment Megyn Kelly turns the spotlight on him, that relaxed image begins to fracture. Kelly doesn't buy the act, and she doesn't tiptoe around it either. With sharp focus and zero patience for political theater, she starts pulling apart the version of Walz he's been selling to the public. The contradictions come first, then the questionable decisions, then the moments where charm was used as a substitute for accountability. One by one, she lays them out, calmly but relentlessly. What makes her approach sting is that she doesn't rely on outrage or theatrics. She relies on precision. Each point chips away at the carefully polished persona, exposing the gaps between image and reality. The friendly smile stops working. The folksy tone can't deflect the questions. And suddenly, the governor who built his brand on being likable looks unsteady under scrutiny. By the time Kelly is done, Walz's carefully constructed legacy no longer feels solid. It looks fragile, like a house of cards caught in a strong wind, swaying under the pressure of facts that refuse to be ignored.
Out on the new media tour and trying to help her when he's not defending his comments on the Electoral College. And he sits down with Michael Strahan, who's the best thing ABC has going. And Strahan actually asks him about his many, many lies. There's a much longer list than actually came up, but he did raise it to his credit. Here's how that
Tim Walz has spent years selling himself as the ultimate everyman governor, the corn-fed Midwestern dad wrapped head to toe in that familiar Minnesota Nice branding. The kind of guy you picture showing up to a potluck with a casserole, a firm handshake, and a long-winded story about his high school football days. Approachable, harmless, relatable by design. But the moment Megyn Kelly takes aim, that entire performance collapses fast, like a flimsy lawn chair folding in a sudden windstorm. Because behind the soft smile and carefully measured delivery is a politician who's played both sides whenever it suited him. The folksy charm isn't authenticity, it's insulation. And Kelly wastes no time ripping it away. She doesn't nibble around the edges or humor the act. She goes straight for the contradictions, exposing how often Walz has shifted positions, softened stances, and recalibrated his values to match the political weather. By the time she's finished, there isn't a single plank of that fence left standing. The regular guy routine stops working. The nice guy shield cracks. And what's left isn't the neighbor from the potluck. It's a career politician caught mid-balance.
In war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being.
If you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what comes next. Megyn Kelly doesn't laugh off Tim Walz's contradictions. She drags them into the light and pins them there. Like a searchlight catching a raccoon mid-sneak in the backyard, there's nowhere for him to hide. Walz has spent years selling himself as the steady, sensible hand of the Midwest. Calm, reliable, reassuring, but under scrutiny, that image starts to fall apart fast. What emerges isn't steady leadership, it's political juggling. One message for one audience, a quiet signal to the opposite crowd, and a smile meant to smooth it all over. And Kelly isn't buying the Minnesota Nice routine for a second. To her, Walz isn't a strong leader or a bold reformer. He's beige wallpaper, dull, predictable, and easy to ignore until you suddenly realize how badly it clashes with everything around it. Once the spotlight's on, the charm fades, the contradictions stack up, and that carefully crafted image starts peeling right off the wall.
That just aren't true. And the comment about weapons of war that I carried in war, which you didn't. You said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre when you weren't. You kind of chalked it all up to bad grammar or getting the dates wrong.
Yeah.
But your opponents say you lied to make yourself look better. Do they have a point?
Well, look, 35 years ago, got the opportunity to be in Hong Kong, be in China, learned a lot about it, served 24 years in the National Guard, passionately, in an instance, talking about gun violence and
Style of leadership is that it only works when he pretends problems don't exist, right up until they become impossible to ignore. When crime rises, he shrugs and offers a vague line about community values. When schools struggle, he drops into a classroom for a quick photo op, nods thoughtfully, smiles for the camera, and then vanishes. It's as if he genuinely believes a friendly grin can substitute for action. Meanwhile, real results remain hard to find, rarer than a Minnesota summer that lasts more than 2 weeks. Megyn Kelly cuts straight through that routine. She points out how Walz hasn't been governing at all. He's been standing next to problems, posing beside them, acknowledging them just long enough to look concerned, but never actually solving them. And once that pattern becomes clear, the folksy charm stops looking reassuring and starts looking like an
News for Tim Walz on the disastrous performance he delivered, in particular when it comes to his self-described knuckle-headed behavior, which was just his latest in a series of lies. The reason he resorted to, I'm a knucklehead, was he got confronted with his latest.
It's not just Tim Walz's lack of real results that Megyn Kelly zeroes in on. It's the contradictions, the kind that are so obvious they practically speak for themselves. Walz talks like a champion of small-town values, but his policies read like they were lifted straight out of a big-city political handbook. He praises freedom and personal responsibility when it sounds good, yet he's perfectly comfortable backing government overreach the moment it benefits his political allies. Megyn Kelly lays it out plainly. Walz isn't a steady, dependable leader he wants voters to believe he is. He's a political chameleon, changing colors depending on the room he's in. And in exposing that, she reveals something far more troubling than bad policy. A governor who seems more focused on staying in power than standing by any real principle.
They know who I am. They know where my heart is. And again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war.
Yeah.
Did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar's not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on my dog.
This took chutzpah. Let's go through it. You said you carried weapons in war, but you've never deployed in a war zone. A campaign official of yours said you misspoke. Did you? Well, I'm proud, incredibly proud.
What really makes Megyn Kelly's takedown land is when she digs into Tim Walz's crisis management, because that's where the cracks in his leadership become impossible to hide. During the pandemic, Walz cast himself as the guardian of public safety, handing out mandates like candy on Halloween. But instead of reassurance, his mixed messages left people more confused than calm. It became clear that sounding composed isn't the same as being effective. Behind the scenes, his leadership looked less like steady command and more like a garage sale in the rain. Rules changed daily. Priorities flipped overnight. Excuses piled up like a student scrambling to explain a missing homework assignment. One day something was essential, the next day it wasn't. Nothing felt settled, and no one seemed sure who was actually in charge. Instead of clear guidance, Minnesotans got chaos wrapped in a friendly smile. And Megyn Kelly doesn't let that slide. She calls it out for what it was, not calm leadership under pressure, but confusion masked as control.
Of them. This one was that he was in China when the Tiananmen Square disaster unfolded, when hundreds of people were killed. You know, whether you were in a place where hundreds of people are being massacred by their government when it happens. But he continues to try to say, like, oh, gee, I was just kind of confused. You know, that happened in May and I was there in August, but I guess I just imagined that I was there, whatever. So he got asked about that debate moment where he completely...
Tim Walz's contradictions on policing and public safety just keep piling up. And Megyn Kelly doesn't let a single one slide. When the cameras are rolling, Walz talks tough about supporting law enforcement, but the moment progressive activists push back, he folds like a paper plate at a backyard barbecue. The result? Chaos left to simmer under his so-called leadership. Kelly calls him out for dodging responsibility during periods of social unrest, pointing out that his passive approach didn't stop the riots and that his constant appeals to empathy never actually restored order. Comforting words, she argues, don't replace decisive action, and Minnesota paid the price for that hesitation. She even compares his governing style to a Minnesota winter, long drawn out, and full of promises that spring is just around the corner, but relief never arrives when it's needed most.
They're comparing this moment by Tim Walz to that because he looked so inept and like a faker, like he didn't belong there and he was trying to convince us of something that wasn't real as he decided to go pheasant hunting. And Charlie, you're a gun guy. You tell me whether this looked authentic to you. Here he is.
That's my theory. And it never fits quite right.
Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400.
Megyn Kelly tears into the idea that Tim Walz is still one of us, arguing that he's been sealed inside the political bubble for so long that the only small town he recognizes anymore is the one his consultants invent for campaign speeches. She dismantles his economic record with the same precision, pointing out that his so-called fiscal leadership has delivered higher taxes, bloated budgets, and government services that barely perform, basically a perfect recipe for taxpayer frustration. It's like buying every expensive kitchen gadget on the market, only to realize you still can't cook a decent meal. Kelly doesn't stop there. She openly mocks Walz's national ambitions, calling them pure delusion. Like a man who can't even run a lemonade stand suddenly announcing he's ready to take over Starbucks. In her view, Walz mistakes photo ops for leadership and applause for achievement. Strip away the staging, and what's left is an image far more fragile than he wants voters to.
In the classroom. Did I mention I was a teacher and a coach, an assistant coach? Okay, whatever. But he's more stolen valor. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom. My record speaks for itself. It doesn't actually. You've put a lot of lies into that record that you've been called out on by service personnel. You must clarify, as your campaign had tried to do. And now you appear to be distancing yourself from that clarification. And then here's, two pieces of this that are really, I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves. And I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied. But stop saying.
Megyn Kelly goes even further, dismantling the idea that Tim Walz is some kind of unifier and flipping the comforting story his supporters cling to completely upside down. The only unity he seems capable of inspiring is the shared eye roll his speeches provoke across the political spectrum. Democrats see him as timid and overly cautious. Republicans view him as reckless and unserious. And independents see something worse, a politician who can't make a decisive move even when the moment demands it. The unifier label isn't earned. It's ironic. Walz hasn't brought people together around progress or purpose. He's united them through disappointment. And in today's volatile political climate, mediocrity isn't harmless, it's dangerous. Kelly shatters the Minnesota nice image piece by piece, revealing that Walz is anything but the calm, steady hand his defenders pretend he...
And Harris said, as she told you to be a little bit more careful on how you say things.
Well, I did it, even the other day of just speaking passionately about these gun violence situations and meeting with these survivors. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I do think in these positions, whether it be governor or being vice president of the United States, you do need to be careful. You do need to be a little more thoughtful on it.
Okay, guys, I will submit to you that the American people are not dumb. And I would submit to you that the American people will look over "I'm friends with school shooters," which he said in that vice presidential debate, as him misspeaking. Everyone will give him that grace. But it's not going to work on this litany of other lies because you don't. And here's how he handled it.
I have my dates wrong. I was in Hong Kong and China in 1989.
that move from Hong Kong into China, it was profound for me. That was the summer of democracy. I said it's where I understood how sacred democracy was. It's what encouraged me, about 15 back and forth with my students, taking them to China. I speak like everybody else speaks. I need to be clear, I will tell you that, but here's my whole point on that thing with China. I do understand China a hell of a lot better than Donald Trump. Kamala Harris understood. Proud to have been very public all these years and owning it when I, said, look, I was there in August of '89. And I think the policies, whether it be dealing with China and understanding China's human rights record, what you can be certain there is that Kamala Harris and I aren't going to, pick dictators on speed dial.
Well, but it's one thing of trust. So there are going to be some people who say, we can't trust him to even tell the truth about himself.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, I said they know who I am. I know who I am. I know the work that I've done. I know that things get